The last time I saw Derek in a suit that actually fit him, he was standing in a conference room on the 14th floor of the Pinnacle Media office, watching two forensic investigators photograph his hard drive while his business partner threw up in a wastebasket. He kept looking at the door like someone was going to walk in and fix it. Nobody walked in. Nobody was coming. The only person who could have saved him was me, and I was the one who made the call. On the table between us sat a manila folder. Inside, 147 pages, 14 months of wire transfers, shell account routing numbers, falsified expense reports, and one very detailed affidavit from a woman named Joelle Marchetti, a woman he'd been sleeping with for 2 years, a woman he'd spent $127,000 on, money he'd siphoned from our daughter Maya's 529 college fund, dollar by dollar, month by month, while telling me we couldn't afford SAT prep. Derek looked at me. He did the thing he always does, the condescending chuckle, the one that used to make me feel like I was overreacting. But this time, it came out wrong. Wet. Thin. Like a cough at a funeral. He said, "Babe, you're spiraling." And I said, "Check column B." But this story doesn't start in a conference room. It starts in February 2019 in the upstairs office of a 3-bedroom house in Fresno, California, with a TurboTax screen, a bowl of leftover pad CEW, and a number that didn't make sense. Let me back up. My name is Renee Okello. I was 33 years old the year everything happened, which means I was old enough to know better and young enough to still believe people could change. I'm a forensic accountant. I know. Riveting. People hear forensic accountant and their eyes glaze over like I just said competitive birdwatching. But here's what forensic accounting actually is. I get paid to find money that people are hiding. I trace it through fake invoices, dummy corporations, offshore accounts, the whole thing. I spend my days looking at numbers the way a radiologist looks at scans, not for what's there, but for what shouldn't be. I was working at Kellner and Associates in Fresno, pulling in $94,000 a year. Not glamorous, but steady. And in my family, steady was everything. I grew up in Stockton, about an hour north. My mother, Adama, raised me and my younger brother Kofi in a 2-bedroom apartment above a dry cleaner. She worked the front desk at a Holiday Inn for 22 years. My father left when I was 7. Just drove to work one Tuesday morning and kept driving. Didn't call. Didn't write. Showed up 9 years later at my high school graduation like he deserved a seat. My mother didn't let him in. She stood at the door of the auditorium with her arms crossed and said, "You don't get to clap for what you didn't build." That's who Adama was. 5'2". Terrifying. She had this phrase she repeated so often, it was practically a family motto. She'd say it while folding laundry, while checking my homework, while standing in line at the grocery store counting items because we had exactly $41 in the account and she needed the total to stay under. She'd look at me and say, "Quiet hands build the sharpest walls." I didn't understand it as a kid. I thought it was something from a proverb book or a church sermon. It wasn't. It was hers. And she meant something very specific by it. Don't announce what you're doing. Don't warn people. Don't argue. Just build. Build the thing that protects you, and do it so quietly that by the time anyone notices, it's already finished. I carried that with me into adulthood the way some people carry a lucky coin. Quiet hands. Sharp walls. I put myself through night school at CSU Fresno while pregnant with Maya. I took my CPA exam 6 weeks after giving birth, studying with a baby on my chest and a highlighter between my teeth. I passed on the first try. Not because I'm a genius, because I'm stubborn, and because I was terrified of ending up like my mother, dependent on a man who might drive away on a Tuesday. There's something I need to tell you about the way my brain works, and this is going to matter later. I don't delete things. Emails, receipts, bank statements, text messages, I archive everything. It's not a conscious decision, it's compulsive. My desk at Kellner had 3 filing cabinets, color-coded, indexed by date. My personal laptop had a folder called House Stuff, with every financial document from our marriage organized by year. Derek used to make fun of it. "You're not auditing us, Renee," he'd say. "We're a family, not a client." He was right about the family part, wrong about the rest. One more thing before I get to Derek. My mother, before she passed in 2017, told me something during her last week at the hospice in Stockton. She was lucid, which was rare by then. She grabbed my wrist, hard, for a woman who weighed 97 pounds, and said, "That college money, you protect it. That's Maya's exit door. Don't you let anybody touch it." She was talking about the 529 account I'd been building since Maya was born. Every birthday check from relatives, every tax refund, every $200 I scraped together from skipping lunches and buying clothes at Ross. It all went into that account. By 2018, the balance was $127,400. That number was sacred to me. That number was the promise I made to my daughter that her life would be bigger than mine. Remember that number. It's going to come back, and when it does, it's going to burn. Now, Derek. I met Derek Vale at a friend's barbecue in June 2010. I was 24. He was 26. He was standing by the grill, holding a Corona, telling a story about getting pulled over in Bakersfield with a trunk full of foam swords because he'd been at a Renaissance fair. Everyone was laughing. Swords. He had that energy. The kind that fills a room without trying. The kind that makes you feel like you're standing in sunlight. He looked at me across the yard and said, "You look like someone who has strong opinions about potato salad." I said, "Mustard base, no raisins, and if there's celery in it, we can't be friends." He laughed, a real laugh, and for a second, just a second, something unlocked in my chest. We dated for 2 years, married in 2012 at a courthouse because we couldn't afford a wedding. Maya came in 2013, and for a while, it was good. Not movie good. Real good. The kind of good where you're eating Chinese takeout on the living room floor at midnight because neither of you could sleep, and he's making you laugh so hard you snort Lumaine through your nose and you think, "Okay, this is my person. This is safe." Derek co-founded Pinnacle Media in 2015 with his college friend, a guy named Briggs Holloway. Digital marketing, websites, social campaigns, SEO packages for small businesses. It started in our garage. I bankrolled the first year, $14,000 from our savings, which I agreed to because Derek looked me in the eyes and said, "I'm going to build something for this family." By 2018, Pinnacle was pulling in about $1.2 million in revenue. Derek valued it at $2.1 million, though he said that number to different people at different times, which I now understand is its own kind of red flag. He hired 11 employees, rented an office on Shaw Avenue, started wearing Allbirds and saying things like synergy and bandwidth without irony. And here's where I should have seen it. But I didn't want to see it, so I didn't. The first sign was the phone. It was September 2018, and we were eating at a Thai place on Blackstone Avenue. Sala Thai, their green curry is devastating. And Derek's phone buzzed. He looked at it, and his face did something I'd never seen before. Not surprise, not worry. Something softer, something private. And then he put the phone face down on the table. I said, "Who was that?" He said, "Briggs. Work stuff." The phone buzzed again. He didn't look at it. Looking back, the warning was right there, pulsing under the screen like a heartbeat. I chose to read it as nothing. It wasn't nothing. The second sign was money. In November 2018, I suggested we sign Maya up for an SAT prep course through Princeton Review. It was $1,200. Maya was 15, and her PSAT scores were strong, and I wanted to give her every advantage. Derek frowned and said, $1,200 for test prep? That's a lot right now, babe. Pinnacle's got some cash flow issues. Ask me again in spring. I didn't push. Old Renee never pushed. The third sign was the bracelet. December 2018. I was Christmas shopping at the River Park Mall, and I stopped at a kiosk that repairs watch batteries. The woman behind the counter looked at me and said, "Oh, are you picking up the Cartier?" I said, "What Cartier?" She blinked. "Your husband was in here last week. Had us resize a Cartier love bracelet. Size 16. He said his wife would pick it up." "I am not a size 16. My wrist is a size 15. I told her there must be a mistake, and she shrugged and went back to her repairs. I didn't get a Cartier bracelet for Christmas. I got a Keurig. I told myself the kiosk woman had confused him with someone else. I told myself a lot of things that winter. I was a professional liar, not to others, but to myself. And that was the last Christmas where I recognized my own marriage. The unraveling started in February 2019. Tax season, my favorite time of year, which tells you everything you need to know about me as a person. I was sitting in our upstairs office at 10:30 p.m. on a Thursday, organizing our joint financial documents for our return. Maya was asleep. Derek was at the office, which by that point could have meant anything. I had a bowl of cold pad CU from that place on First Street, and I was cross-referencing our bank statements with our credit card charges. Standard stuff. The kind of thing I do in my sleep. And then I found a gap. Between January 2018 and February 2019, $47,000 had moved out of our joint savings through a series of transfers to an account I didn't recognize. The transfers were irregular. $2,800 here, $4,100 there, $1,500, $6,200. And they were labeled Pinnacle Media Operating in the memo line. I frowned, not panicked. Not yet. Business expenses moving through a joint account was sloppy, but not criminal. Derek was sloppy about a lot of things. The next morning, over coffee, Folgers, because we were apparently too broke for the good stuff, I asked him, "Hey, I was doing the taxes and noticed some transfers to an account ending in 4471. Is that the business operating account?" He did the chuckle. That sound. The one that starts in the back of his throat and comes out through his nose, like I'd just said something adorable and stupid. "Babe, you're spiraling again. It's for Pinnacle's Q3 expansion. I moved some capital around. You wouldn't understand the business side. I trace financial fraud for a living, Derek." "Right. But this isn't fraud. It's my company. Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane." He said that to me, a forensic accountant, about money. I dropped it. Because that's what I did. That's what I'd always done. My mother's voice whispered in the back of my head. Quiet hands build the sharpest walls. But I wasn't building anything yet. I was just quiet. 3 weeks later, Maya changed everything. She came home from school with a form from her guidance counselor, Mrs. Fan. Junior year financial planning. The form asked for documentation of any 529 or education savings accounts for college applications and financial aid projections. Maya needed the current balance. Mom, can you just log in and screenshot it? Mrs. Fan needs it by Friday. Sure, baby. I logged into the 529 that evening. I typed in the password I'd had since Maya was born, Maya star 2003, because she was born during the Perseid meteor shower, and I am exactly that sentimental. The balance loaded. $11,340. I stared at the screen for a long time. The pad CU went cold beside me. The house was quiet. Somewhere down the hall, Maya was on FaceTime with her friend, laughing about something, and the sound of her laughter hit me like a fist because she didn't know. She didn't know that someone had reached into her future and pulled out $116,060. My hands were steady. That's the thing people don't understand about me. When the worst thing happens, I don't cry. I don't scream. I go very, very still, and something in my brain switches from person to auditor. I clicked on the transaction history, and there it was. Monthly withdrawals, starting March 2018. $3,400 here. $5,200 there. $8,000 in August. All transferred to the same account ending in 4471. The same account from the joint savings. Derek hadn't just been moving business money. He'd been draining our daughter's college fund. I closed the laptop. I ate 3 spoonfuls of cold noodles because I hadn't eaten since lunch. And then I did the thing that Renee Okello does when the numbers don't add up. I opened a new spreadsheet. Column A, what Derek said. Column B, what was true. Column C, where the money actually went. That spreadsheet would eventually reach 147 pages. But that night, it was just 3 columns and a question I was afraid to answer. I didn't confront him. I want you to understand why. It wasn't weakness. It wasn't denial. It was professional instinct. In my line of work, when you find fraud, you don't walk up to the suspect and say, "Hey, I noticed you're stealing." You document. You trace. You build the case until there's nowhere left to hide, and then you hand it to someone with a badge. Confrontation is the last step, not the first. So I started tracing. The account ending in 4471 wasn't a Pinnacle Media account. It took me 2 days to confirm that. Pinnacle's operating accounts were at Valley Republic Bank, and their numbers ended in 8803 and 8807. I knew this because Derek, in one of his less careful moments, had left a business bank statement on the printer the previous April. I'd filed it. Of course I'd filed it. I file everything. Account 4471 was a personal checking account at a Chase branch in Clovis. It was not in Derek's name. It was in the name of Joelle Marchetti. Joelle Marchetti. I Googled her at 1:47 a.m. on a Wednesday, sitting in my Honda Civic in the garage because I didn't want Maya to see my face. Joelle was 29. She worked in marketing, of course she did, at a firm in Fresno that, funny enough, had done contract work for Pinnacle. Her Instagram was public. She had 4,300 followers and a feed full of brunch photos, gym selfies, and this is the part that made me grip the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Pictures of a Cartier Love bracelet, size 16. Posted December 26, 2018. The caption read, "When he knows exactly what you want." He did know, because I'd pointed out that bracelet in a magazine the previous October and said, "These are beautiful." And he'd said, "Yeah, maybe for your birthday." My birthday is in March. I didn't get one then either. He bought his girlfriend the bracelet I wanted, with money he took from our daughter's future, and she posted it on the internet for the world to see. I sat in that garage for 45 minutes. The engine was off. The overhead light buzzed. I ate a granola bar I found in the center console, Nature Valley, the kind that crumbles everywhere. And I let myself feel it. All of it. The humiliation. The theft. The specific cruelty of telling me we couldn't afford $1,200 for Maya's test prep while wiring $3,400 a month to a woman who posted brunch photos with the hashtag blessed. And then I was done feeling it. And I started working. Over the next 6 weeks, I built the case. Not as a wife, as a forensic accountant. I treated Derek Vale like any other subject of a fraud investigation, and I was meticulous. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because while I was tracing money in the dark, Derek was getting worse in the daylight. The gaslighting had always been there, but in 2019 it sharpened into something surgical. Every question I asked was evidence of my instability. Every concern was an overreaction. He had a script, and he ran it with the consistency of a man who'd been rehearsing. In March, I asked why our credit card bill included a $340 charge at a restaurant in Clovis I'd never heard of. Vino e Cucina, an Italian place with cloth napkins and $48 steaks. He didn't miss a beat. Client dinner, Renee. I told you about this. Are you not listening to me when I talk? I had listened. He had never mentioned it. I don't remember you mentioning, because you don't listen. You hear what you want to hear. This is why I don't tell you things. You make everything a crisis. That phrase. You make everything a crisis. He must have said it 100 times in our marriage. It was his kill switch. The moment those words came out, I'd feel the floor tilt under me, and I'd start questioning whether I was the problem, whether I was too anxious, too suspicious, too much. In April, Derek told Maya, our daughter, our 16-year-old daughter, that she should ask Mom about money for a school trip to Sacramento. The trip cost $175. He was Venmoing Joelle $3,400 a month and couldn't spare $175 for his kids' field trip. Maya came to me with her head down and said, "Mom, Dad said to ask you. He said things are tight. Things are tight. While he was spending $7,200 on jewelry for someone else. I paid for the trip. I didn't say a word. Quiet hands." In May, Derek's mother, Lorraine, came to visit from Bakersfield. Lorraine Vale was a woman who treated her son like he was a limited edition collectible and me like the packaging he came in. Functional, but disposable. She'd never liked me. I wasn't the right kind of wife for Derek, in her estimation. Too quiet, too plain, too focused on numbers instead of making a home feel warm. Over dinner, I'd made herb-crusted salmon, roasted asparagus, garlic mashed potatoes, a meal that took me 2 hours. Lorraine looked at her plate, looked at Derek, and said, "You know, Joelle makes a wonderful salmon. Have you had it?" The table went silent. Derek's fork stopped midway to his mouth. I said, "Who's Joelle?" Lorraine's face did something complicated. "Oh, one of Derek's colleagues. She brought food to the office potluck. Derek mentioned it." "I don't think I've heard that name." Derek set his fork down. "Mom's confused. She's thinking of someone else." Lorraine wasn't confused. I could see it in the way she held her wine glass. Too tight, knuckles pressing white against the stem. She knew. She'd probably known for months. And she'd just slipped. Right there over my salmon. The salmon I'd spent 2 hours making. I smiled. I said, "This salmon's pretty good too, Lorraine." And I made a note in column A. By June 2019, I had mapped the full financial architecture of Derek's affair, and it was worse than I'd imagined. The $47,000 from joint savings, confirmed. The $116,060 from Maya's 529, confirmed. But there was a third stream I hadn't expected. Derek had taken a $35,000 line of credit against our home equity, our house, the one I'd made the down payment on with my savings, and funneled it to yet another account, this one at a credit union in Madeira. The account was in both Derek's name and Joelle's. Total, roughly $198,000 diverted to fund an affair. But here's where the story takes a turn that I genuinely did not expect. Because while I was tracing Derek's money, I found Briggs Holloway's. Briggs was Derek's business partner, co-founder of Pinnacle Media, the ideas guy to Derek's operations guy. I'd always found Briggs unsettling. Too many teeth in his smile, too much cologne, the kind of man who called every woman sweetheart and thought it was charming. But I'd never had reason to look at his finances until I noticed that Joelle Marchetti's LinkedIn listed a previous employer, Holloway Consulting Group, Briggs's side company, the one he'd started before Pinnacle. That was a thread, and I pulled it. What I found was this. Briggs had been systematically embezzling from Pinnacle Media for at least 2 years. He'd created a network of fake vendor accounts, graphic designers, SEO consultants, content creators. That didn't exist. They were shell companies routing money back to accounts he controlled. The total was somewhere around $340,000. And Joelle? Joelle had worked for Briggs before she, coincidentally, started dating Derek. She'd been introduced to Derek at a Pinnacle holiday party in 2017, an event Briggs organized. I'm not saying Briggs planted Joelle. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. But I am a forensic accountant, and when I see a pattern, I follow it. Joelle's relationship with Derek gave Briggs cover. While Derek was distracted, emotionally, financially, logistically, Briggs was looting the company from the inside. Derek was too busy hiding his own secrets to notice that his partner was robbing him blind. Two thieves in the same house, each too guilty to look closely at the other. So that was quite a discovery, actually. I didn't tell Derek about Briggs. I didn't tell anyone about Briggs. Not yet. Because telling Derek would mean revealing what I knew, and I wasn't ready to show my hand. My mother's voice. Quiet hands build the sharpest walls. I was still building, but I needed help. Not emotional help, structural help. I needed a lawyer. I found Paloma Reyes through a colleague at Kellner. Paloma was a family attorney in Fresno with a side specialty in business fraud litigation. She was 52, 5'0", with reading glasses she wore on a beaded chain and a voice like a high school principal who's seen every excuse. Our first meeting was at a Panera Bread on Herndon Avenue because Paloma said, "I don't do anything important without soup." She ordered a bread bowl of broccoli cheddar. I ordered a Caesar salad I barely touched, and I laid out the whole thing. The affair, the 529, the joint savings, the home equity line, the shell companies, Briggs. Paloma listened without interrupting for 22 minutes. Then she took off her glasses, set them on the table, and said, "Renee, how long have you been sitting on this?" 3 months. 3 months? And you haven't confronted him? Haven't told a friend? Haven't thrown a single plate? No. She looked at me for a long time. Then she picked up her bread bowl and said, "Good. Don't start now. We're going to need all of this exactly how you've built it. Clean, Documented. Time-stamped. Paloma filed a protective order on the 529 account. Quietly. Through the court. In a way that would prevent further withdrawals without alerting Derek. She also connected me with a forensic IT specialist named Dustin Crew, who specialized in recovering deleted digital records. Dustin was 28 and looked like he hadn't slept since 2016, but he was brilliant. He recovered deleted text messages, Venmo transaction records, and, this was the piece that changed everything, a series of emails between Briggs and Joelle that predated Joelle's relationship with Derek by 4 months. In those emails, Briggs explicitly discussed introducing Joelle to Derek. One line read, "If he's busy looking at her, he won't be looking at the books." I read that sentence in a Panera Bread parking lot at 3:15 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was the most perfectly structured fraud I'd ever seen, and I found it. Me, the boring wife, the one who should stay in her lane. My lane was a 4-lane highway, and I was driving a truck. Meanwhile, at home, Derek was escalating. The gaslighting had curdled into something meaner. In July, we were at a barbecue at his friend Wes Kimura's house. Burgers, Bud Light, kids in a sprinkler, and Derek made a joke in front of 8 people. Renee's idea of a wild Friday night is reorganizing the filing cabinet. I married the most exciting woman in Fresno. Everyone laughed. Even me. I laughed because that's what you do when your husband humiliates you in public. You laugh, and you file it away, and you add it to the spreadsheet you're building in your head. Wes's wife, Tamsin, pulled me aside later and said, "He's being a jerk tonight." I said, "He's been a jerk for a while." Tamsin looked at me like she wanted to say something else. She didn't. She squeezed my arm and went back to the grill. That's the thing about enablers. Most of them aren't malicious. They're just afraid of the mess. They enable through silence, and silence is its own kind of betrayal. In August, Derek did the cruelest thing he'd ever done, and he did it with a smile on his face. Maya had been working on her college application essays. She was applying to UC Davis, her dream school. She'd been working with her English teacher on a personal statement about growing up watching her mother study for the CPA exam while holding a baby, about what sacrifice looked like up close. She was proud of it. She read it to me at the kitchen table, and I cried, and she said, "Mom, stop. You're going to make me cry too." Derek overheard. He walked into the kitchen, leaned against the counter with a glass of water, and said, "That's nice, Maya, but you might want a backup plan. College is expensive. I don't want you to get your hopes too high." Maya's face crumpled. Not dramatically, just deflated, like someone had let the air out of her. "I thought we had the college fund," she said. Derek looked at me, and there it was, the cruelest part. He looked at me like I was the one who was going to have to explain it, like I was the one who'd failed. "Ask your mom about that," he said. "Ask your mom." As if I were the one who'd drained it. As if the $116,060 he'd funneled to Joelle Marchetti was somehow my oversight. I looked at Maya. I looked at Derek. And something inside me went very quiet. Not broken, not angry, just clear, like a lens coming into focus. I said, "The fund is fine, Maya. I've got it handled." Derek smirked. He actually smirked, because he thought I didn't know. That night, after Maya went to bed, I sat in the upstairs office and opened the spreadsheet. It was 94 pages by then. I added one more line to column A. "Ask your mom about that." In column B, I wrote, "He stole it." And in column C, I wrote, He's going to pay it back. That was the shift. Not a dramatic speech, not a thrown vase, not tears, just a sentence in a spreadsheet. A decision made in a quiet room at 11:47 p.m. with nothing but the hum of the ceiling fan and the knowledge that I had every single receipt. Here's what nobody knew. I'd started preparing for the end of my marriage in April 2019, 4 months before that moment in the kitchen. While Derek thought I was doing our taxes, I was doing something else entirely. I was conducting a full forensic audit of our marital finances, Pinnacle Media's books, and Briggs Holloway's vendor network. Not as a wife, as a professional. By August, I had assembled the following: the complete transaction history of the 529 account, showing $116,060 in unauthorized withdrawals mapped to transfers to Joelle Marchetti's Chase account. 14 months of Venmo records between Derek and Joelle. $3,400 per month, regular as rent. The $35,000 home equity line of credit taken without my knowledge or consent, routed through a credit union account jointly held by Derek and Joelle. And, this was Paloma's favorite part, email correspondence from Briggs Holloway to Joelle Marchetti, predating her relationship with Derek, explicitly strategizing to use a romantic relationship as cover for embezzlement. Remember when I told you I never delete anything? Remember the filing cabinets? Every financial document from our marriage organized by year? Those cabinets became exhibits. Every bank statement Derek had tossed on the counter thinking I'd throw it away. Filed. Every tax return. Filed. Every business expense he'd casually mentioned. Cross-referenced and filed. My mother's voice. Quiet hands build the sharpest walls. The wall was 147 pages thick. And it was finished. Paloma Reyes was ready. Dustin Crew had delivered the recovered digital evidence on 2 encrypted drives. I had retained a second attorney, Gideon Ware, a business litigation specialist in Sacramento, specifically to handle the Pinnacle Media fraud claim on my behalf, since California community property law meant I had a legal interest in the business Derek had built during our marriage, the same business Briggs was looting. I also did one more thing. I contacted the California Franchise Tax Board with the documentation of Briggs's shell vendor scheme. This wasn't revenge, it was the law. The fake vendors created false tax deductions. That's tax fraud. I reported it the way I'd report any fraud I discovered in the course of my professional work. Clinically. Thoroughly. By the book. The last piece was Joelle. This is the part people always ask about, so let me be clear. I didn't contact Joelle. I didn't threaten her. I didn't need to. What I needed was her testimony, and Paloma got it. Paloma reached out to Joelle through a legal intermediary in September 2019. She laid out what we had: the emails with Briggs, the financial trail, the exposure Joelle faced as a participant in what was functionally a fraud scheme. Joelle could cooperate, provide a sworn affidavit detailing the nature of her relationship with Derek, the financial support she'd received, and her prior relationship with Briggs Holloway. Or she could be named as a co-defendant in both the divorce proceedings and the potential fraud case. Joelle cooperated. She cooperated so thoroughly that her affidavit was 31 pages long. She detailed everything: the dinners, the gifts, the cash transfers, and most importantly, Briggs's role in introducing her to Derek. She confirmed that Briggs had approached her in 2017 and suggested she get close to Derek as a way to keep him distracted and manageable. In exchange, Briggs would funnel her $2,000 a month from the shell vendor accounts. Joelle had been paid by both men. The mistress was on 2 payrolls. I'll admit, when Paloma read that part of the affidavit to me over the phone, I laughed so hard I had to pull over. I was on Route 99, driving home from work, and I sat on the shoulder of the highway laughing until my ribs hurt. Because what else do you do when you discover your husband was a puppet and didn't even know who was pulling the strings? The confrontation happened on October 3rd, 2019, at 2 p.m. in the Pinnacle Media Conference Room on Shaw Avenue. I'd asked Derek to meet me there under the pretense of discussing our tax situation. He agreed, casually, the way he agreed to everything he thought I was too boring to weaponize. Briggs was in the office. That was important. I needed Briggs in the building. When I arrived, Derek was sitting at the conference table with a glass of sparkling water, scrolling his phone. He looked up and did the chuckle. "You brought a folder? Babe, we're not in court." Paloma walked in behind me. Then Gideon Ware. Then 2 investigators from the Franchise Tax Board, both wearing lanyards and carrying clipboards. Derek's face went through 4 stages in about 6 seconds. Confusion, recognition, calculation, fear. "What is this?" he said. "This is column B," I said. Paloma placed the first document on the table, the 529 transaction history, annotated in red. Derek stared at it. I can explain that. You transferred $116,060 from our daughter's college fund to your girlfriend's checking account over 14 months. I've highlighted the dates. Renee, you're spiraling. I'm not spiraling, Derek. I'm auditing. Gideon placed the second document, the joint savings analysis, then the home equity line documentation, then Joelle's affidavit. Each one landed on the table like a small, precise bomb. Derek's hands started shaking. The condescending chuckle was gone. In its place was a sound I'd never heard from him, a kind of stuttering breath, like a machine running out of power. "Renee, babe, let's talk about this. We can figure this out. We're past figuring." And then Paloma delivered the part I'd been waiting for. She called Briggs into the conference room. Briggs walked in grinning, because Briggs always walked in grinning. "What's up? Tax stuff?" He saw the investigators. His grin melted like wax. Gideon placed the shell vendor documentation on the table. The fake invoices, the routing records, the email from Briggs to Joelle. If he's busy looking at her, he won't be looking at the books. Briggs read the email. He read it twice. Then he turned to Derek and said, "You told her about Joelle?" Derek stared at Briggs. "You knew about Joelle?" "You knew about the vendors?" Briggs said. They stared at each other. 2 men who'd been stealing from the same company, from the same family, from the same woman, each suddenly realizing the other was also a thief. It was like watching 2 rats discover they'd been sharing the same trap. One of the FTB investigators stepped forward with a clipboard. "Mr. Holloway, we'd like to discuss the vendor accounts registered under Pinnacle Media, perhaps somewhere private." Briggs's face went gray. Actually gray, like cement before it sets. He looked at me. For the first time in all the years I'd known him, Briggs Holloway had nothing to say. Derek turned to me. His eyes were wet. Not sorry wet. Scared wet. "Renee, please, think about Maya." I picked up my folder. I looked at him, and I said 5 words. "I am thinking about Maya." Then I walked out. The door closed behind me with a soft click. The hallway smelled like carpet cleaner and old coffee. I walked to my Honda Civic, sat in the driver's seat, and ate a bag of goldfish crackers I'd left in the center console. I ate them one at a time. Each one crunched like a small, satisfying punctuation mark. It was 2:47 p.m. The October sun was white and flat through the windshield. Somewhere behind me, inside that building, two men were watching their lives dismantle in real time. I started the car and drove to pick up Maya from school. Within 2 weeks, Briggs Holloway was formally under investigation by the California Franchise Tax Board. His access to Pinnacle Media's accounts was frozen. He retained a criminal defense attorney from Sacramento, whose retainer alone was $25,000. Within a month, Derek was served with divorce papers. Paloma's filing included the full forensic analysis, the 529 theft, the joint savings diversion, the unauthorized home equity line, and a community property claim on Pinnacle Media. Under California law, a business started during a marriage is community property. Derek's $2.1 million valuation became my leverage. Paloma argued, successfully, that Derek's financial misconduct warranted an unequal division of assets. Derek fought it, of course. He hired a lawyer named Van Kelton, a man with a $400 haircut and a reputation for aggressive litigation. And with Van Kelton lasted 6 weeks before withdrawing from the case. The reason, I was told, was that Van Kelton reviewed the 147-page financial analysis I'd compiled and told Derek, "You can't win this. She's better at this than both of us combined." That might have been the nicest thing anyone said about me that year. Within 2 months, Pinnacle Media was effectively dead. With Briggs under investigation and the company's books exposed as fraudulent, clients fled. All 11 employees found new jobs within weeks. I actually helped 2 of them update their resumes because my problem was never with them. The Shaw Avenue office lease was terminated. The $2.1 million valuation collapsed to whatever the remaining contracts and equipment were worth, which wasn't much. Derek moved into an extended-stay hotel off Highway 41, the kind with a microwave and a parking lot that smells like exhaust. Lorraine called me once from Bakersfield and left a voicemail that started with, "I hope you're proud of yourself," and ended with, "Derek is devastated." I deleted it without listening to the last 30 seconds. Some messages don't deserve the full runtime. Joelle Marchetti, for her part, disappeared from Instagram for 3 months. When she came back, the Cartier bracelet was gone from her photos. She'd moved to Modesto. I heard through Paloma that she'd cooperated fully with the FTB investigation and avoided criminal charges in exchange for her testimony against Briggs. The divorce was finalized in March 2020. I received the house, full custody of Maya, a lump sum payment of $89,000 from the dissolution of Pinnacle's remaining assets, and, most importantly, a court order requiring Derek to repay the 529 fund in full, plus interest, through garnished wages. The college fund was rebuilt. Not overnight, but it was rebuilt. Derek reached out to me once more in June 2020. A text message, 11:14 p.m. It said, "I know you won't believe me, but I'm sorry. Not for getting caught. For who I became. Maya deserves better. You deserved better." I read it twice. I didn't respond for 3 days. When I finally did, I wrote, "She does. I did. I hope you figure out why." That was the last time we spoke outside of custody exchanges. Maya got into UC Davis. Early admission. She called me from her bedroom screaming so loud the neighbor's dog started barking. I stood in the kitchen with the phone pressed to my ear and tears running down my face, and for the first time in 2 years, they weren't the bad kind. The day I drove her to Davis, a Thursday in September, the sky so blue it looked fake, the car packed with Target bedding and a mini fridge that barely fit in my trunk. She turned to me in the parking lot of her dorm and said, "Mom, I know what happened with the money. I figured it out last year." I froze. Maya, I'm not mad at you. I want you to know that. I'm not mad at you. You saved it. You saved everything. She hugged me in that parking lot for a long time. A mother and her daughter, standing between a Honda Civic and a shopping cart full of throw pillows, holding on. I drove home alone. The apartment, I'd downsized after the divorce, a 2-bedroom on Nees Avenue with a balcony that overlooked a Walgreens parking lot, was quiet. Not empty quiet. Peaceful quiet. I made coffee, not Folgers. Lavazza, the good stuff. I sat on the balcony with my mug and watched the sun come up over Fresno, all gold and pink and ordinary, and I thought about my mother. Quiet hands build the sharpest walls. She was right. She was always right. But I think she left out the second half. Quiet hands build the sharpest walls, and then they open the door and they walk through, and they don't look back. I had a dream once, before all of this. A small dream, embarrassingly small. I wanted to open my own forensic accounting consultancy, a little firm. Just me, maybe one associate, helping people, mostly women, find money that had been hidden from them. Divorces, business disputes, estate fraud. The kind of work where being boring, being meticulous, being the woman who files everything and deletes nothing, isn't a punchline. It's a superpower. In January 2021, I filed the LLC paperwork. I called the firm Okello Forensics. The logo is simple, just the name in clean black letters. No tagline, no slogan. The work speaks for itself. Last week, a woman sat across from me at my desk, a small desk in a small office, in a strip mall between a nail salon and a FedEx, and told me her husband had been hiding money for years. She was shaking. She couldn't look me in the eye. She kept apologizing for taking up my time. I handed her a tissue. I opened my laptop, and I said, "Tell me everything. Start with the bank accounts." She looked at me like I'd thrown her a rope. That's the thing about being underestimated, about being the quiet one, the boring one, the one they tell to stay in her lane. They never see you coming. They never hear you building. And by the time they notice the wall, they're already on the wrong side of it. My name is Renee Okello. I'm 35 years old. I live in Fresno, California, in a 2-bedroom apartment with a balcony, a filing cabinet, and a very good coffee maker. And I am done being quiet.